So I think we're recording. Hello, welcome, Mr. Afif Kaja. Did I pronounce it correct?
Yes, you did. Welcome, Nikhil. Thank you so much for taking me on.
Yeah, welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. This is going to be a pre-recorded episode. Before we get started, just for our audience, if you can introduce yourself.
My name is Afif Khaja. Can I talk a little bit about my background?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I live in the United States, in the Midwest, in Chicago, and I was born and raised in a practicing Muslim family. My parents are from the South Asian subcontinent. My dad's from Hyderabad, and my mom is from Karachi. So my dad's from India, and my mom's from Pakistan. So I have like kind of
Uh,
a mixed culture there.
do you
And
speak any Telugu or?
I wish, but I just speak Hindi and Urdu. So.
Yeah, no, because I do the Telugu side because I'm also from Hyderabad.
Oh, okay, okay, nice. Now, unfortunately, I'm not able to understand Telugu at all.
Yeah.
But so my family is very practicing and conservative. Actually, there's not a single girl in our family that doesn't wear the hijab or the niqab, and we all pray 5 times a day, or I used to, but we all pray 5 times a day, and fast every Ramadan, and all the families, whenever they get money, they save up and they go to Umrah or Hajj, and that's like the greatest vacation that they could ever have. so and so I've been practicing my whole life, and they're just very devout. And basically, when I was in school, my parents took me out, and after third grade, and I went and did hifz of the Quran, which is just like memorization of the Quran in Arabic without actually understanding what it says. But that took me about a year and a half full time. And then once I finished that, then I went back to school. But instead of going to public school, I went to an Islamic school, a private school, and then I studied there for 3 years. And I learned, in addition to secular education, I learned like Islamic history, Quranic studies, the life of Prophet Muhammad, the life of the Sahaba, the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties, and the Mughal dynasty, the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic history, and things like that. So I was very well grounded in Islamic history and Islamic theology, Islamic fiqh, and things like that. And then I also attended a lot of seminaries at Al Maghrib Institute. I'm not sure if you've heard of that,
I
but
have.
oh, you have, okay. So I studied under a lot of different shuyukh. I studied under Dr. Yasir Qadi, uh, Sheikh Muhammad Al Sharif, Walid Basyuni, Yasser Birjas, Abdul Bari Yahya, Muhammad Faqih, and I took a lot of courses in like Islamic theology, fiqh, like which is like Islamic law, usul al fiqh, the principles of fiqh, and then like things about like the Day of Judgment, heaven and hell, things like that. And um, and then I attended this course called Ilm Summit in 2008 in Houston, Texas. I think it was like a 2-week program where I was introduced to Dr. Jonathan Brown, a scholar of Hadith, and I took a class under him on the science of Hadith. And also, I was introduced to Noman Ali Khan for the first time, and he did a course on Balagha, which is like the linguistic miracle of the Quran. And Dr. Yasir Qadi was also there, and he was giving us like scary jinn stories, and we were all like freaking out. And there's one course I took with Dr. Yasir Qadi called Aqidah 101, which is like Islamic theology, and he had a tawiz with him. I'm sure you know what a tawiz is, the thing that people hang around their necks. And
Yeah.
he opened it up and he showed us what was written on them, and it was the names of devils, right? It was some extremely like bizarre in Arabic, like the names of like devils that he was pronouncing, and we were all freaking out because at that point we all believed in jinns and magic and possession and all that. So it was a really good time. So I have a really good grounding in Islam, like Islamic theology, fiqh, and so that's why I'm like tuned into the Islamic environment. And I I've always listened to a lot of Islamic apologists, and I still do now. One of my favorite lecturers of all time is Anbar al-Awlaki. He's his terrorist activities aside, I'm not talking about those, but I'm just talking about like his lectures on like stories of the prophets and Day of Judgment and things like that. And that's when I started really getting into Islam. And I've always listened to like a lot of different Islamic scholars, and I do now, I do even now, like I listen to like I watch Daniel Hakikaju, I watch Sajid Lipham, Dr. Yasser Qadhi, Mufti Abu Layth, Jawad Hashmi, Engineer Mirza, Mufti Tariq Masood, Tariq Jamil, Javed Ghamdi, Sabur Ahmad, Imran Hussain, Azim Rahman Osmani, Bilal Phillips, a lot of people. So this is like one of my passions. I'm just very interested in knowing like, and Hamza Mayat from the Hamza's Den. So I just love listening to like a lot of different perspectives from atheists and also from Muslim scholars.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing because listening to both sides is one, you get more content for your channels, but the second thing is you get to actually understand what the perspectives are rather than focusing on one thing. Now, for the audience who thinks I'm like looking away or I'm distracted, the questions that I wanted to ask I have written on a different tab on the other side of my screen. So just for the audience, they usually I don't want to get trolled with Discord, but
No problem at all.
so I actually saw you on Hamza's Den. Before we go into how you start to question Islam and such, how was your experience on there? If you can.
I loved it. Actually, I was really scared that I would get muted or booted out because I've seen a lot of Hamza shows. I've seen him on Speaker's Corner, and I've seen him debating with ex-Muslims. And when he gets mad, then he usually mutes or kicks out people of the stream. So I was scared, but he actually treated me really well. He didn't mute me a single time. He let me fully express my views. He interrupted me a few times, but I feel like I still had the chance to get my point across. So I actually really enjoyed the discussion, and I was glad that I went on the show.
Yeah, I watched that video, and for anyone who wants to watch it, your channel will be linked in the description. Also, you have a lot of great content, so everyone should go and visit it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so the next question I would want to ask you is what led you to question your beliefs? Because obviously you're well read in the theology, so what was the defining moment or the journey of
I'll tell you
the
where it began.
question?
Yeah, the journey where it began. So what happened was, I think this was about like 8 years back. When I was in university, I took a course called History 101, and it was
Okay.
just about the history of humans. So I thought it would just be about the history of humans. And then you know how we Muslims believe that humans go all the way back to a single common ancestor human named Adam and Hawa and all
Adam.
that. So that's what I was just expecting. Like, okay, they'll talk, you know how I learned about in Islamic history about Umayyads and Abbasids and Mughals, Ottomans, and so I just thought he would be talking about Greeks, Romans, and all that. But then all of a sudden, he started going back in time further and further and further, past 3,000 years, past 5,000 years, past 10,000 years, and then he all of a sudden started talking about like 100,000 years plus, and then he was talking about humans being apes and human evolution and things like that. And I was just really confused because I was thinking like that evolution at that point. I just thought it was like a fictional story made up by atheists because they had no answer, no alternative to believing in God. So I was really confused that he'd be teaching that in a history class, right? And then I thought, okay, that completely contradicts what I learned because I learned special creation, that Allah created Adam from dust, and with his bare hands, and blew His spirit into him and told the angels to bow down to him, right?
Yeah, one sec. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
signal someone to tell them I was recording.
Oh, okay,
Somehow
no,
magically, whenever I get, let me just put the questions here as well, so it's a lot
sure,
easier for me.
sure.
But yeah, yeah. So please continue
Okay,
as
thank you.
well. Yeah.
So yeah, so evolution is, so then that's when I just had a small doubt. Like I was thinking like, okay, what's going on? Like why are they teaching evolution? And then what I did was I just decided that okay, they're teaching evolution, and whenever I watch any animal, I love watching animal documentaries, right? Like about cheetahs, lions, and tigers, and whatever, monkeys, and all the time, all they talk about is evolution. Every scientist, like that's all they talk about is like how, the big cats, diverged over time, over millions of years, and they developed these features at this time, and in this area and all that. So then I decided, okay, so I'll just study evolution with a clear mind and see whether it makes any sense, right? And then when I studied it, when I actually read like some articles on it, and then I just realized that okay, it's a very strongly supported theory, And there are a number of like different lines of evidence that support evolution. If you just look at the fossil record, you can see that over time, over millions of years, animals sorry, the diversity of life increases. So species start to diverge, and then it's also corroborated by DNA evidence, where like the closer you are related to another species of animal, the more your DNA matches. So like humans and chimpanzees match by like 98% DNA, and the further and further we go back, like with different apes, like gorillas, with orangutans, it gets a little less, and then all of a sudden you even have matching DNA with like bananas, apples, fruits, and things like that. So that was very compelling evidence. And then especially studying like the evolution of the whale, right? The whale, the fact that
Yeah.
it lives underwater, but the fact that it doesn't have gills, it doesn't breathe under the water, and it gives live birth, and it feeds its young, and is warm blooded, and the fact that it has digits, and it, it's closely related to like hippopotamuses, which are like land animals, right?
Yeah.
So studying about whale evolution, it just became clear to me that evolution is actually a very good explanation for the diversity of life. And then I read a book called The Magic of Reality by Richard Dawkins, and it's one of the most brilliant books that I've ever read. And it talked about like the fact that there's no single first human, right? Just like over time, over millions of generations, like there's incremental change, and there's no like defined moment in time where the one species changes to another. It's like when you grow up from being a child to an adult, there's no single point in time. It's just where you become an adult, right? It's just successive changes over, you know, a very large
Multiple generations.
multiple generations, exactly, that leads to that change. So evolution
Yeah.
is where I started doubting Islam, right? And then I started thinking about all the other aspects. Like, I one thing that really bothered me is like I used to do dua a lot, right? I used to pray a lot, and it bothered me so much that I never heard anything back, right? I can talk to people, right, that are real, right? I can talk to you, I can talk to Muslim apologists. They love talking endlessly about Islam and converting people and things like that. But if there's Allah, then Allah should be the greatest reality in the world, right? So if Allah is real, then I should be able to, he should be able to express himself. Like, why is he only able to talk through one single human and then never able to talk again to anybody else, right? So that really started bothering me, that if Allah is real, then what's actually the difference between a real and fictional character, right? Allah is just written in a book, but other characters that are fictional are also written in books, like Harry Potter, Dumbledore, Voldemort, and then you also have fiction about like dragons and Santa Claus and things like that. But what's really the difference if between something that's invisible and that doesn't exist, right? So if Allah is not able to express himself in any way, then that gave me doubts that whether Allah is even real, right? So
Yeah.
sorry, so evolution and the fact that there's no physical evidence, that also like increased my doubt. And then what I did was I took a course called World Religions in university, in when I went to community college, and I studied all the different major world religions like Taoism, Confucianism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I realized that all of these religions, they have completely different teachings, but the fact is that their gods are all different, and their religious mythologies are all different, right? They have their own origin stories, and there's no empirical way to differentiate between them. Like, if you look at the fact that, like, if you're born in India, most likely you'll be born a Hindu, and if you're born in Pakistan, most likely you'll be born a Pakistani, right? But Hindus have their own gods and Muslims have their own god, Allah. But there's no way to tell which god is real, right? Because if Islam were true, then the difference between a true religion and a false religion should be like the difference between day and night, right? You should easily be able to tell. But all these religions, they're all they're all created and conveyed by humans in human languages, in human books. Humans are the ones that carry these religions on their backs, right? Allah is not able to, establish his own Sharia on the earth. He relies on humans. He relies on humans to spread his message. In America, like, Native Americans never got the message of Islam, right? Islam was supposedly revealed in 610 CE, right, which is about 1400 years ago. But Muslims only came to America like 100 years back, and before that, there was no Muslim. Like, Allah wasn't able to convey His message to Native Americans for 1,300 years. So that just made it more clear that, yeah, like the involvement of humans in all of this, that humans are the ones who establish masajid, like Muslims. They establish masajid, they establish Islamic schools, they establish Sharia, but Allah is not able to do anything Himself. Like, if someone goes, they can just go and destroy the Kaaba, and Allah won't be able to do anything about it. So that's one of the some of the reasons why I started doubting Islam.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of doubt for me as well because of I actually thought that evolution was a crock of shit because you can't at least what I was told, because you can't magically get one thing from another. But then my friend was like, all right, think of it this way. Latin didn't magically become Italian or French or English. It happened over thousands of years. The English that's spoken today is not the same English as Shakespearean English or the English before that. It changed over generations. So it's the same way with the evolution of language. Often is almost identical in terms of the schematics and such of the evolution of animals. So you have to think of it more like that. And the moment I started thinking of that, it kind of broadened my horizons. So I think in terms of questioning, you and I had very similar
That makes a
backgrounds.
lot, that makes a lot of sense. And I was reading a cookbook from 500 years ago in English, and I was not able to understand like 90% of what they're saying in that cookbook, right? And
Mm.
even though it was in English, so I mean, just everything. Like, this is something that I noticed about Islam and versus sorry, Islam versus like science or biology, is that Islam presents a very static view of the universe, whereas in science we know that everything evolves over time, right? Like Islam says Allah created the mountains as pegs to prevent the earth from shaking, right? It says that Allah created the stars as lamps, and then created the sun and the moon. But the fact is that stars are born and they die all the time, right? And the sun is just a
Yeah.
star, but obviously Allah didn't know that. But and then oh yeah, but I wanted to say about my doubts. A lot of the scientific issues in the Quran, in Islam, and the contradictions in the Quran are what got me. One is the fact that the Dhul Qarnain, who I believe is
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it seems very obvious that he went and he saw these people, and so what he did was he went to the setting place of the sun, and it says in the Quran that hatta idha balagha maghrib ash-shamsi wajadaha taghrubu fi aynin hamia, which means he went to the setting place of the sun, and he saw it set in a spring of murky water, right? And then there
Yeah.
was a hadith in Sahih Muslim where he was riding a donkey with Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, and he said Abu Dhar, ya Abu Dhar, what's going on? Like, you see the sun setting, where does it go after it sets? And then he said, Allah and His Messenger know best. And then Prophet Muhammad said it sets in a spring of murky water, right? And then and then in the Quran they change, like Dr. Mustafa Al-Khattab is the one who is currently the one who has the primary translation of the Quran on Quran.com, and he adds so many words to English that are not in the Arabic. Like it says in the Quran translation on Quran.com of that verse that it appeared to him that the sun set in a spring of murky water. But the Arabic word for that is wajadaha, which is he found it, and it's a literal word. And the word right after that, the phrase right after that is wajadaha taghrubu fi aynin hamiyah, but wajada indaha qawma, which means he found near it a people, right? So he found near that the setting place of the sun a people. That's literal. So this should also be literal because they use the same word, right, in a similar context. That, and then the contradictions, the problems in the Quran, right? The factual inaccuracies. There's a verse of the Quran which says, وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ أُزَيْرٌ ibn Allah وَقَالَتِ النَّصَارَى الْمَسِيحُ ibn Allah ذَلِكَ قَوْلُهُمْ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ, which means that the Jews say that Uzair is the son of Allah, like, and the Christians say that Isa is the son of Allah. So I don't know a single Jew in the whole universe that says that Uzair is the son of Allah. That's like saying that Muslims say that Yunus is the son of Allah or something similar to that, right?
Yeah.
So that's completely false historically and in the present. And secondly, there's so many things. Like there's a hadith that says that Allah comes down to the lowest heaven in the last third of the night, right? But
Yeah.
we know that it's always the last third of the night somewhere somewhere on the earth, right? But obviously Prophet Muhammad didn't know that because he didn't know how that the orbit of the earth around the sun is what causes the day and night, right? The Quran
Yeah.
never meant sorry the Quran it never mentions the motion of the earth. It always talks about the day and night in the context of the sun, the orbits of the sun and the moon, right? And yeah, so basically things like that, like the oh yeah, and then there's a verse in the Quran which says that talking about Mary, the son of the mother of Jesus, right? It says Ya ukhta Harun. It calls her the sister of Harun or Aaron, right? So the interesting part is Mary, the mother of Jesus, she didn't have a brother called Aaron, but Aaron himself, the brother of Moses, they both had a sister named Mary. So there was a sister named Mary, but it wasn't this Mary. It was a Mary that lived 1,200 years before the Mary that's mentioned as the mother of Jesus, right? So it's a historical, inaccuracy, and that's something that you wouldn't expect from a divine book.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few of those errors that get people pissed if you ask them. For example, Mohammed Hijab got very pissed when or angry at Yasser Qadi for talking about the holes in the narrative, as Yasser Qadi says, right? So it's a lot of these questions, or even asking questions after a certain point, gets irritating on many of these issues that are inconsistencies. Now, speaking on questions, when you started getting these doubts, did you speak to anyone in your Islamic community about the concerns or doubts or wanting to leave?
Before that, do you think I could clarify a little bit of some of the doubts that I had a little more?
For sure, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so those were just the starts of my doubts, but now we're talking about why I left, right?
Yeah.
Why I left. Okay, so basically, you definitely know about this is the Sinjar massacre of August 2014 by ISIS to the Yazidi Kurdish women in Iraq and Syria, right?
Yeah.
And that happened in August 2014, and I was watching the footage, right? And what they did was they took the men and they lined them up outside and they shot them all in the head, right? And the women were inside they aggregated all the women inside like some halls, and the women were screaming and wailing, and I still have nightmares about that, the way they were like so stressed out. And then what they did was they took the women and girls and they made them into sex slaves, right? And they distributed them to the male soldiers to rape. So at that point, I since I was born until that point, I've never heard of sex slavery in Islam, right? No one ever told it to me in any class or in any masjid or anything like that. And obviously, I was always taught that Prophet Muhammad was a mercy to mankind, and obviously, a normal person couldn't do any of this. So obviously, a prophet of God, who's the greatest human being ever lived, could never do something like that, right? But then when I studied the text, I read the Quran, I read the Hadith, right? There's a verse in the Quran in Surah Nisa, verse 24, which says, وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, which means all married women are forbidden to you except those whom your
Right hand position.
right hands possess. Like married women, you can have sex with married women who you own, who you capture as a result of war. Like if that's not rape as a weapon of war, I don't know what is, right? So I read that. I read the Sahih Muslim Hadith number 1456D, which says that the Sahaba, they went during the Battle of Hunain, they went to Autas and they captured the people and they overcame them and they captured the people. They took their properties, they took the women and girls, but they weren't sure if they should have sex with the women because their husbands were alive. So then they asked Prophet Muhammad, like, what should we do? And that's when he received Surah Nisa verse 24, which says that it's okay to have sex with married women even if their husbands are alive, as long as you capture them in war, right? So after that, I was just like, I'm out. Like I'm not going to support any kind of ideology that teaches these kinds of like immoral actions, right? And then there were
And
things.
isn't that the point that you brought up at Hamza's den, where he kept on asking, like, "Oh, what is a sex slave?" And I'm like, "Do you not know that?"
Yeah, actually, the problem is that the word rape is not used in that verse. It just says sex with married women, and that's why you have to imply that. I don't know if there's a rape a word in Arabic, but I know that the word in the Quran is just used as sex with married women. But obviously, that's rape because obviously they have husbands, and he was talking about the needs of the women, right? But the hadith wasn't about the needs of the women, it was about the needs.
But the thing is, even if it's about the needs, the need of that woman is food and shelter, not sex. What woman thinks, "Oh, my husband's just got slaughtered. I'm horny." I don't know about modern, like ancient Arabia, but modern times, that's probably not how a lot of women think.
Exactly. So, and also the hadith itself, it says that we went and we captured excellent Arab women, and the distance from our wives became hard on us. So we asked the Messenger of Allah, like, can we have sex with these women? And then even if they're married, and then he said, it's okay. So obviously they had their wives waiting for them at home, and they captured these women. Their husbands are in chains, and then they're having sex with them. So obviously there's nothing but rape involved in that. And then Muslims apologists, they lie so much. Like 99% of them say that it's sex slavery is no longer allowed in Islam, right? There was Dr. Yasser Qadi and Dr. Hamza Yusuf. They signed a letter, an open letter to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi from ISIS, and they said that you are spreading corruption and lewdness on the earth. And by the ijma of the Islamic scholars, which is the consensus of the Islamic scholars, sex slavery is no longer allowed in Islam, right? So that reminded me of a verse that I read in the Quran, which says that, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله, which is talking about the Jews. It says that they took their rabbis as lords beside Allah, right? Because what Allah made halal, they made haram, and what Allah made haram, they made halal, right? In the Quran and the Hadith, there's nothing that says that sex slavery will be forbidden in the future. It's just as allowed as for marriages or nikah or whatever, right? It's just something that's clearly allowed. It says in Surah Nisa, Surah Mu'minun, verses 5 to 6, that illa ala azwajihim aw ma malakat aymanuhum fa innahum ghayru malumin, which means you can have sex with your wives or your sex slaves if they're in your possession, and you will not be blamed for that. So and also like Sheikh Ibn al-Uthaymeen is one of the most respected Salafi scholars of the 20th century. There was a war going on in Bosnia, and the Muslims, male soldiers, they captured some female women, and they wrote to Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, and they said that we have these women in our possession, can we rape them? And then he said, no, it's not allowed in today's time, right? And that's one of the reasons that Dr. Yasir Qadi also said that, based on his sheikh's ruling, that it's not allowed in Islam. But obviously humans don't have the right to alter the teachings of Allah, right? It's not al-Baghdadi, in the Dabaq magazine, ISIS, they wrote that what rights Allah gave to us, that no human can take that away from us. And I agree with them from a scriptural basis, right? There are also other things that really bothered me about Islam that came to the surface that I never really considered when I was practicing. One of them was the polygyny, which is like the fact that husbands can have multiple wives, and but women only have to have one husband, right? I watch a lot of Pakistani dramas with my mom, and like every other drama, they have this where the man marries another wife, right? Like a second wife. And it's always one reason or another. Like sometimes the woman is not able to get pregnant, so the man marries a second wife. And I mean, I just can't imagine, like, I can't imagine if the situation were reversed, and I only was able to have one wife, and my wife could have four husbands. Like, that's not something that I would ever be able to tolerate. So I think it shouldn't be tolerated with men either. Like, the men shouldn't be able to have more than one wife. That's like, I think of it as, being legalized adultery.
Yeah, but according to great scholar Ali Dava, men are polygamous in nature.
No, I don't know about other men, but I know that I'm not. And I think women are just as jealous as men when it comes to having exclusive rights to a partner, right? And there are a lot of different moral issues, right? Like for example, hand chopping, right? There's the Quran says wasariqu wasariqatu faqta'u aydiyahuma jazaan bima kasaba nakalam min Allah, that as for the male and female thief, then cut off their hands as a recompense for their actions. And there's a hadith of Prophet Muhammad that says that may Allah curse the thief who steals an egg, rope, or a helmet, and his hand is cut off, right? So basically, if you steal anything at all, your hand gets cut off, right? A lot of Muslim apologists say that, you don't know what you're talking about, you've never read Islam. There are 80 conditions there are 80 conditions that need to be met for somebody's hand to be cut off in Islam and all that. but obviously that's not the case. And then they always talk about Hazrat Umar, the fact that he never allowed hand chopping for theft during the time during famine, right? But then you also have to consider the fact that Hazrat Umar basically changed like so many teachings of Prophet Muhammad, right? Like the three talaq rule, and this one, the hand chopping, and a number of other ones I can't recall at the moment. But me as a Muslim, like I come from a Salafi background, right? Like Salafi or Ahl Hadith in Pakistan and India, and we take the sources very literally. And what we do is we take the Quran and the Hadith, and we don't take this opinions of scholars as evidence, right? So anything that the Prophet Muhammad did, if one of the Sahaba did something that goes contradictory to that, we don't take what the Sahaba says, right? So if Prophet Muhammad said that if someone steals an egg or a rope, their hand should be cut off, and that's what we say, that if someone steals an egg or a rope, their hand should be cut off. That's why Salafis are very close to like ISIS. The only difference between Salafis and ISIS is that ISIS, the sex slavery part, and also the fact that the ISIS engages in jihad, which is like fighting in the way of Allah, whereas Salafis are more like quietist and peaceful. But the fact is that I believe that ISIS is a lot closer to Islam than, because Prophet Muhammad himself, he wasn't an ascetic, right? He wasn't a Sufi saint. He was a jihadist. He used to go and conquer other places, take their property, take the women and girls and distribute them, and as part of the war booty and things like that. So his life was very similar to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's in a way where I kind of imagine it is he probably had a lot of influence from the militaristic background of the Romans at that time as well, because the areas that he was conquering were also inspired in terms of military of the surrounding area, and it was very aggressive at the time. So that's probably how he wrote or came up with a lot of his teachings in the first place.
Yeah. And then also the morality of of Islam is why I left, right? So I started having doubts for rational reasons, but then the morality is what issues are what caused me to leave. And then there's a hadith that says that anyone who commits, if you see like two homosexuals committing a homosexual act, then both of them should be killed, right? But then I thought about it, and I thought like, okay, what kind of Allah is it that would create homosexuals and give them that nature and then have them killed, right? That doesn't make any sense. Like, you're creating something and you want to have them killed. So then I came to the conclusion that whoever created homosexuals, it can't be Allah, because Allah wouldn't create something and just wanted those people to be killed just because of their nature. And then there's also a hadith that says that that anyone who leaves Islam, you should kill him, right? And actually, this is a hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, that whoever leaves their religion, then kill him, right? And actually, this is one of the reasons that I was very stressed out when I first came out of. I'll talk about that a little later, but I also wanted to say, my Sheikh, Dr. Yasir Qadi, I've been following him very closely for a long time, and his views have evolved a lot, right? He used to be a Salafi preacher, but now he changed to like, he's a lot more like in the middle between heterodoxy and orthodoxy. And he used to make fun of evolution. He used to say that, their ancestors are apes and monkeys, but our ancestors are like noble prophets, when referring to like evolution. But then just like 5-10 years ago, he came out and then he said that evolution is very strongly supported by science. It's something that has to be true. And he changed his views on the Quran. He used to believe that it was perfectly preserved, dot by dot, letter by letter, zabar by zabar, zero by zero, page by page, etc. But now he came onto Muhammad Hijab's show and said that, and Hijab asked him, like, if I gave you a blank mushaf, can you write the Quran? And then he's like, Akhi, can't talk about this in public, take my course. And he's like, there are holes in the standard narrative, and this is not something you can talk about, and all that. So he knows what's up. He knows all the issues. He knows the different transcripts of the Quran. He knows how many discrepancies there are, and he knows all about the Sana manuscript and the Birmingham manuscript, and all the different, like the Hijazi script, the Kufi script, and all that. And also regarding the hudud, he used to believe that the hudud need to be established, but now even in Muslim countries, he's saying that the hudud don't need to be established because their nation states are not compatible with whatever the tribal system. But the Quran, what does the Quran say? It says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. That says in one verse. In another verse, it says, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. In another verse, it says, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. That whoever rules by the laws other than Allah, he's a kafir, a fasiq, and a zalim, right? So Dr. Yasir Qadhi, he said that one of his favorite scholars in the whole world is Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi. But Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, he said on camera that he rejects Sharia in Egypt and he wants democracy. And someone asked Sheikh Ibn al-Uthaymeen about this, and he said that if Sheikh al-Qaradawi really said this, then he's an apostate and he should be executed. So Dr. Qadi is no longer a Salafi, and his views have shifted a lot, and that's something that I just find very fascinating to follow. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Qadi, man, but he's a very popular Islamic scholar.
Yeah, we actually reacted to a few of Yasir Qadhi's points and such in the past. Were you able to discuss with him or anyone in the communities about these doubts as well? And if so, what were the kind of responses you got on this?
Well, I've always been a debater. Like I love engaging in arguments and debates with people. Like even when I was a Muslim, like when I was in school, I used to try to convert everybody I knew to Islam. And I had a teacher in high school, a social studies teacher, and I always used to try to convert him to Islam. And I even gave him a book by Harun Yahya, which had like the teleological argument for the existence of Allah, and which just states that the creation is so complex it couldn't have just arisen by chance alone, and there needs to be a creator. And there's this atheist girl in my school. She was a communist atheist from Eastern Europe, and I used to always try to convert her over. But then once I started having doubts, then I talked to people, but I didn't talk to any sheikh, even though a lot of people were telling me that you should talk to the sheikh and that sheikh. But the fact is that I knew it wouldn't be of much benefit because I already watched a lot of YouTube videos of Islamic scholars. I knew what their answers would be, and I did discuss like these issues with my parents. Like I talked like with my mom and told her that, and she became very upset, and she was saying like, oh, you're being badly influenced by these people online, and you're gonna go to hell, and we can't accept this and things like that. So yeah, so it was I didn't really speak to any Islamic scholar personally about it, but I've always been engaged on the online community. So before I used to always be on the side of apologists, but now I'm on the side of atheists, so I always try to argue on the side of atheism.
Yeah, and are you publicly an atheist or? Yeah,
Yeah.
if that's the case, then how did your family and friends react when you told them that you were leaving?
Well, yeah, I am a public atheist, but well, my parents took it the hardest. My mom's very religious. She's a student of Dr. Farhat Hashmi. She's a hafiz of the Quran, and she teaches tajweed and Quran. And she became very upset, and she was saying that like, if that's the case, then we won't be able to live together and things like that. But I was able to kind of convince them that, like, I was just telling them that family relationships are above religious beliefs, and it's not something that you should split over. So luckily, like, I'm still with my parents, and they haven't forced me to move out, but they took it very hard, badly, and they don't like the fact that I do activism online, and they want me to just remain quiet about my beliefs and not talk about them with anyone else. But I'm a stubborn person, so I don't really listen to them. But I don't discuss my atheism at all with my elder relatives, like my aunts and uncles. They're all very religious, and I just know that they won't be able to handle it. Like, they just can't even think about someone like becoming an atheist. It's like something that's like unthinkable for them. So I never discuss it with them. My cousins all know that I'm an atheist, and the thing is, like, they're cool with it. They don't care. But the fact is that I always post like things related to Islam on my WhatsApp group, on my cousins group, right? And that's when they started like really disliking me for that, because instead of hating Prophet Muhammad, they started hating me for bringing up all these things that he did, right? So then we just came to the agreement that they would be cool with me as long as I never talked about Islam with them. unless like, so that's why we had to create a separate group for Islam related topics. But I'm very fortunate that I live in a country where I have rights, right? Like if I was in a Muslim country, obviously, who knows? Like, what if I was in Pakistan? I might be in prison, in death row for blasphemy, right? So I'm just grateful that I'm in a non-Muslim country where my rights are protected by Islamic law. Like, actually, I was very stressed out when I first came out as an atheist because I thought someone would come and kill me. The reason is because the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari which says that whoever leaves Islam, then you should kill him. But luckily, nothing like that ever happened. And living in a non-Muslim country, your rights are protected. And then friends and family, they're really not that kind of violent against you. I think in the West, growing up in the West, people are a lot more tolerant because they're raised and exposed to other cultures and religious beliefs. So it's just a lot safer to come out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a similar experience for me as well because the amount of threats I'd get and insults, and I'd be like, "Hey, buddy, there's nothing you can say to me that I haven't said to myself in the mirror this morning, in front of the mirror this morning. You're not gonna get me offended." And then some guys would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna slit your throat and such," and I'm like, and I'm like, "Here, I'm right here. Kill me, all right?
Right.
I'll be the happiest person if you can do it. I've been suffering from depression for 2 years. Come on." And
Yeah.
give them answers like that and just troll them back. And
Yeah. Mhm.
just seeing them get brain aneurysms would give me the greatest of happiness. Like, imagine killing someone just for having a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you look at my personal Instagram, I never, or my social media, I post photography and writing. I never actually post anything religious.
Oh, okay.
Not once in my personal life, outside of gin and tonic, do I bring up religion as a topic.
Oh, wow.
I actually deviate from the topic if anyone does bring it up. So
Wow.
it's not because of the threats, but it's just like what someone else believes is none of my business. And I'm not going to be preaching to them trying to convert them.
Right. Right.
Faithism or pantheism or whatever. And that, if I don't want them preaching to me, I got to follow the same by not preaching to them.
Right.
So
Right.
that's my kind of mentality that I try to follow.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm really surprised that you had that's because I'm like, luckily, it's been what, how many years since I came out? Like 6 years, I would say, and I haven't had a single death threat, and really, yeah, none at all, and even online or in person. And generally the response has been really good. I don't know a single atheist in my personal life, but online, I'm just glad to have like an online community. I follow a lot of atheists online. I follow Khalid Kamal the most, also Haris Sultan, Desi Neo, Nabi Asli, Usman Ayub, Dark Matter. I don't know if you've heard of Dark Matter, but he has really good content on atheism and Christianity. um, but
Yeah. I actually, if you do need an atheist friend in public, in real life, I go to Buffalo Grove quite regularly for work.
oh, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and then Lou Malatney, the pizza there
Yeah,
is amazing.
in the
Right
suburbs.
across
Yeah,
the, yeah, and then you take the pizza there. You go down to the harbor. You eat your pizza with the wind blowing on your face. It's absolutely amazing.
yeah, it is definitely. Yeah, if you come down here, just let me know. We'll definitely hang out, and it'd be an
For
honor
sure.
to host you.
Yeah, and speaking of like the social life and such, how has leaving actually affected your? We talked about the personal side, but in terms of the social side.
Um, my social life, it hasn't really affected me that much because just like living in the United States, like we're all born and raised like with different with friends of different religions and cultures. No one really cares. Like here, like as long as like if you don't share your religious beliefs, then no one really cares. So it didn't really like impact my friends. Like I have a lot of Muslim friends, and I did tell them, but they took it well, and they didn't really care. So socially, it's been good. Like I said, in my personal life, I don't know any atheists, but online, like there's a robust community. I'm so glad for YouTube because it allows people like me to express our views and interact with other ex-Muslims. So it's been really nice. Like there, I did have some depression after I left Islam because it's kind of hard, just to change your entire worldview. And the fact that like there's no one that, you know how when you're Muslim, you always know, or you're confident, like you have faith that there's somebody out there that's all powerful, that can help you, and if you're in a tough situation, he can take you out. But then once you lose that, it's kind of like you're on your own, and life is a mess, and it's difficult and things like that. But I got over it, and I think it's a lot of atheists definitely they go through that phase where they when you change your religious beliefs like that, it alters your entire life, so it's everything becomes uncertain. But then over time, then you start to build your life back together. So I think at the moment, yeah, it's going really well, and I'm just glad that I'm able to freely express my views.
Yeah, and said you studied other religions briefly. Why become an atheist and why not explore something else like Hinduism or pantheism or something like that?
Yeah, because all of the religions, they're the same in a lot of ways, right? They have like scientific inaccuracies, they have contradictions in their religious texts, they have moral issues. Like with Hinduism, you have like sati, which like where the woman sometimes sets herself on fire after the
Once she becomes a widow, she burns herself along with
yeah,
her
when she
husband
becomes
for
a widow, she burns
divination.
herself. Yeah, and then secondly, you have the caste system. So just seeing the effects of Hinduism, where you're just from birth until you die, you're just like thought of as less than, just because of what family you were born in, and you know, and then I thought about the fact that like after death, the stories are so different. Like in Islam, you have heaven and hell. In Hinduism, you have reincarnation and liberation and all that. But everyone's just making up their own stories. Like I can sit here and write my own story about what will happen after death, right? But there's no evidence to support anything, right? So it's all just like talk with no evidence. So if there's no evidence, there's no gods that can express themselves to do miracles and things like that, and that's not something that I want to believe. And I just want to say a couple of things regarding Islam. Some of the scientific issues that I had. One is that the Quran talks about Prophet Adam, and it says that he was 60 cubits tall, which is 90 feet for a human. And now we know that over time, like over centuries, the average height of humans has increased, right? Now it's like whatever, 60 inches or 65 inches, 70 inches at max, right? But uh, like because of advances in technology and science, human lifespan has increased, and well-being, right? So if you say that there was a human that's 90 feet tall, that was the first human, and that height went down over time, then that goes completely against what we know from science. And also age, like human age has increased over time because of advances in science. But there's a verse in the Quran that says like وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ فَلَبِثَ فِيهِمْ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا خَمْسِينَ عَامًا, that Hazrat Nuh, Prophet Nuh, he preached for 950 years. But we don't know a single person that lived longer than like 120 years, right? So it's
Especially back then, he gets one cut, gets infected, and he dies before
yeah,
30.
exactly. So and then all these miracles, right? Like Prophet yeah, Musa, he threw his staff, and then he split the Red Sea into like two mountains of water, like Qatawd al-Azim, which means like two great mountains, right, of water. And Prophet Isa, he created a bird from clay, and then he blew into it, and then it became a living being. And this is exactly how Allah created Adam, right? But the interesting part is that the chemical composition of clay doesn't match the chemical composition of human skin. So it's just something that you observe, and you would think that that humans are look like clay, so they must be made from clay, but they're not, right? And then Prophet Isa, the ability he had to like heal the leper and heal the blind, and Prophet Muhammad splitting the moon, and and then having his entire army drink from a single cup of milk. All these miracles happen in primitive times, but what happens now? Like now we have cameras, we have like a globally like united world, where we can share instantly anything that happens across the world. And now we don't see any more miracles, we don't see any supernatural events. Like in the entire year of 2022, nothing happened except natural events, right? Humans and animals. No jinns, no demons, no angels, no nothing, except just naturalism. That's all we have.
Yeah, and from that, so although a lot of these religions would be false in like at the basic level, but would you still say that You believe in a higher power and such, potentially looking at something like natural pantheism.
No, I at the moment I switch my stances on these things a lot, but at the moment I consider myself a Gnostic atheist with a G, uh, GNOSTIC. I believe apostate prophet is the same, but most vast majority of atheists are agnostic atheists. They still leave the room for some type of creator god, but I believe that there's no room for any kind of gods because there's no room for any kind of gods because the concept of God itself is something that's created by humans, right? There's no external reason why someone believes in God. It's just something that they invented from their own minds to try to explain things with that which they're ignorant about. But everything we know is explained by naturalism, right? And everything we don't know, we have confidence that will be explained by naturalism because that's the only, valid explanation. And I think of it like this, right? Um, let's say take a television, for example, right? A television, it works through physical, scientific principles, right? It interacts with satellites and things like that. But if you know what it if it do, if you know what a television does, right, you know how it works, so there's no problem. It works through natural means. But if you're ignorant, right, and someone comes up to you and says, oh, you're ignorant about how the television works, so isn't it possible that there could be like fairies that are, sitting under the TV, inside the TV, and directing the channels? But you would say that I'm ignorant, I don't know how the mechanics behind how the television works, but I know that it's something natural because everything around us, none of the supernatural explanations that are given by humans have any kind of like basis in the real world. That's why I don't have any confidence that there could be any kind of gods because there's no physical evidence for it.
For sure. All right. So my last question would be, what would you say to someone considering leaving Islam?
Okay, it's a very difficult question. First thing is safety, right? Depends where you are. If you're in Pakistan, you don't want to openly declare yourself as an atheist, right? Otherwise, there's a blasphemy law, and you'll get booked, and either you'll be mob lynched or you'll be put in death row. And there's so many innocent people like Junaid Hafiz and Mishal Khan was lynched to death, and Ayaz Nizami, Sajid Sumro, and so many people that are wrongly convicted and put into prison. And Pakistan is such a savage country. Like they just don't have any kind of tolerance for religious diversity of religious opinion. So if you're living in a country like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, or any Muslim majority country, you just have to be very careful. It's better if you don't come out publicly as an atheist. It's better if you just leverage the online community, create a fake ID, and spell your heart out, but don't come out to people. Don't ever discuss religious topics with them. Your safety is first. Your life is worth more than it sucks that you have to say that because I know how hard it is. Like everyone has like a natural need to express their views, and just being in the closet is so suffocating. But the fact is, you have to be in a safe place. You have to be financially stable before you come out to anyone. And if you're in a non-Muslim country, then things are a lot better because you have protections from the state. So if you are financially stable, you know that your family, your extended family, and your friends will, take it well, or at least they won't disown you. Then it's something that you should definitely, consider. And if you're in a good place mentally, yeah, and there are no security issues, and you're financially stable, then you can come out in a non-Muslim country. Yeah, I'd be in favor of that.
And one thing I would like to add as well from personal experience, if you are leaving in a Western culture, I know the amount of stigma that South Asians have on it, but therapy is a 100% viable option, especially in the Western world.
Okay, okay.
And yeah, and it's there's always medical professionals around that can help you. The fact that there's an entire branch of medicine called psychiatry to help people deal with problems like this should show you like they're not all idiots to invest millions of dollars into this, right? So there's nothing wrong with seeking help.
100%. Yeah, psychiatric help. Yeah, I still do have take therapy. I still visit a psychiatrist. I think it's something that no one should be ashamed of doing. And if you need help, then go get that help. And nothing's more important than your physical and mental well being.
Yeah, because it is something that a lot of people are talked down to upon. Oh my God, you're going to a doctor. It's like,
No, but the attitudes on that have changed drastically. I think from our last generation to this one, I think people
yeah,
are a lot more aware that mental health is something that's very serious and needs to be your brain needs to be taken care of in the same way that you're taking care of your physical body. And it's never a bad idea that if you need help, then you should definitely go get it.
yeah. On that note, we'll go on to the next portion. So recently, Daniel Hakikachu has done a debate with Inspiring Philosophy, Mike from Inspiring Philosophy. Did you watch that debate, Afi?
I did not watch that debate, but I watched one single clip from Apostate Prophet in which he defended child marriage, and it was such a like it was he didn't do a good job. Like it was kind of indefensible the way that Daniel went about it.
For any Muslim audience member that is watching, I want to clarify. Can you explain why you think, or not why you think, but because it's not an opinion, but why, as a fact, child marriage is immoral? Just so we can clarify that before we go further. What
Yeah,
would your opinion be?
the reason I believe child marriage is immoral is because kids are not physically mature. The first reason is that they're not physically and mentally aware. Sorry, mature enough to consent to having any kind of like sexual relationship. Like their bodies are still growing, and like the women, they need the calcium. Girls, they need the calcium that they get for their own bones, right? Especially if they get pregnant, that's something that it results in premature deaths and things like that. So yeah, child marriage, something that's inexcusable because there's no consent, right? There's no meaningful consent because they don't know what it means to get into a sexual relationship. Once you're an adult, like, right, then you're physically mature enough, you're mentally mature enough, like your brain has developed to the point where you're able to meaningfully consent. And I think that's the only case where you should be allowed to have engage in some kind of relationship.
Yeah, so to anyone watching, that's why it's morally objectionable. And we did an episode on this previously as well. So anyone, that'll also be linked somewhere. But yeah, so on that note, we have a video called by Shajid Lipam. Do you know this gentleman?
Very, very well. I follow him very closely, and I think he's from an Islamic perspective, he's a very knowledgeable person. He went to Medina University, studied there for several years. He studied in the College of Dawah, I believe. For 2 years, he studied Arabic, and then for 4 years, he did his bachelor's degree in the field of Dawah. So he's extremely knowledgeable. He's and he has a very nice, like, calm way of expressing his views, and he comes from a Salafi perspective, which I can identify very much with because that's the perspective that I was raised in. So I like his approach. I like the fact that he prioritizes the Quran and the Hadith and takes a literal approach to the teachings.
Yeah, I tried mocking him once or twice, but that's just because I'm a troll. But the thing is, I find him a lot more tolerable than Daniel Haqiqatjou.
Yeah,
Um,
I follow Daniel very closely as well. I think he's an explosive figure, and he does have a lot of good points too, like especially on social issues. But I believe Daniel is conservative, but he's kind of a reformist in my opinion because in his debate with Har Sultan on Islam and slavery, he said that sex slavery is no longer allowed in Islam, and the justification he gave for that is he said that because humans have advanced technologically, we no longer need manpower, so we don't need to take slaves. That's why slavery is not allowed and sex slavery is not allowed, even though there's no such logic in the Quran and the Hadith, and it's completely allowed and permissible, and was practiced by Prophet Muhammad and his companions. So that's one area where I disagree with Daniel. But on most areas, he follows the Quran and the Hadith very well, and both him and Sajid, they come from a Salafi perspective. So their views on, like, their literal approach when it comes to interpreting the Quran and the Hadith, it aligns very well with my own.
for sure. So this video here, he actually has a message to non-Muslims based off of that debate that Daniel did with Inspiring Philosophy, which was, I have to say, disgusting. Because Daniel, at one point, Inspiring Philosophy was like, "Would you marry a 10-year-old if she hit her period?" Yes. 7-year-old? Yes. 3-year-old. I would have to ask the scholars, but if she hit her period, yes. And it was like,
Wow.
and these are actual quotes that Daniel said. This was an
But
actual question.
how's it possible? Because I thought the earliest a girl can reach puberty is like 8 years old.
There's some condition that happens where certain female woman or girls start getting their puberties really well, and Inspiring Philosophy brought a case where a girl had started it at 11 months.
That's quite an unusual
Yeah, it is
situation.
rare,
Yeah.
but it does happen, and then that's where Daniel bit his own tongue.
I mean, think about how immoral this is. Like Prophet Muhammad, he was a 50-year-old man when he married a 6-year-old girl, and they consummated the marriage when he was 53 and she was 9, and she was sitting on some like a swing, and she was like playing on a swing, and she was sweating, and her mother came and got her and washed her face and put her on the lap of Prophet Muhammad, and then everyone left the house of Abu Bakr, and then that's where he consummated the marriage. And there's a hadith that says that she used to play with dolls with her friends. And when Prophet Muhammad used to come inside, then her friends would run away. So he would call her friends to come back and play with her. Like, so little girl, like, if you're a 50-year-old man, you're old enough to be your grandfather. Like, you're gonna really do that? I mean, it seems like it's something that's extremely
Disgusting.
morally
Yeah.
disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see what this gentleman has to say about that. At any time, if you want to pause and say something and interrupt
Yeah. I
the
mean,
video, yeah, go feel free to. And we kind of need to do that for copyright reasons as well.
yeah.
So
I would say that wherever you find a good moment to stop, then we can just pause there and then discuss.
for sure.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome all viewers. Today I'd like to make a public service announcement to the non-Muslims who may have been given a false impression of Islam. I actually come from a non-Muslim background. I have non-Muslim family members. I live in America. I'm surrounded by non-Muslims all the time. And I've made it a goal, a priority in my life to call to Islam, to teach people about Islam. And
this is one thing that I have indifference of Sajid here. Now, obviously, I do run I'm one of the hosts on Gin and Tonic and such, and I do talk about religion. But at no point am I here educating people on atheism, on what the atheist point of view is. We just discuss hadiths and such.
Yeah.
So I think that ideologically, that's the difference between him and me. For anyone who would ask, where he's about spreading Islam, whereas I'm about actually analyzing it rather than trying to spread it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I'm on the opposite spectrum, so you could think of me like the atheist Sajid Libham, because I always, even when I was a Muslim, I used to always try to convert people over. Right? It's just my nature and my habit. Like, I just want to spread whatever information I know, and then just exchange information with others. Also learn from them, but also the information that I know, I want to spread to other people, because I know that most Muslims are very ignorant about Islam, right? A lot of Muslims just think that Islam is humanism, right? They just say that, Islam just means peace, it means tolerance, it means, just following Prophet Muhammad, who was the best example for all humankind, right? But then once you study his life, you realize that he's no different from like Genghis Khan or any kind of like evil dictator. So,
for sure. And it's one thing where my personal view is that if religion brings you peace, it's about bringing you peace. But if it's an MLM or a cult or a pyramid scheme where the only way you can get into Jannah is by getting signatures, then you're in a cult.
I mean, in my view, all religions are cults, right? Because they threaten you with punishments if you leave, and they threaten social boycott, and you have to think like the group, and you have to follow everything without question. You have basically the cult leader is their god, right? So I actually believe that instead of Allah, Prophet Muhammad is the god of Islam, because he's the one who came up with all the teachings. He made exceptions for himself. He didn't follow his own rules. He married as many women as he wanted. Women could just gift themselves to him, and he didn't need any wali when he was marrying women, right? He got married to Zainab, his adopted son's wife, because he was attracted to her, and he didn't need any wali from that. He said that he was sitting with Aisha, and then he got a revelation that Allah married Zainab to you. So then he smiled and he said, go and tell Zainab the good news that Allah married me to her. And how shameless is that? That you're sitting with your wife, you're the prophet, you're the greatest human being of all time. You're sitting with your wife, and she doesn't even feel safe that you're going to look at other women and propose to them, marry them. What kind of greatest human being does those kind of actions?
Yeah, and those reasons are the reason why I don't follow it, right? And obviously, like, one thing I always say is that if you're a criminal and you go to prison, but then you find Islam and then you're not committing crime anymore, I'd rather you continue to follow Islam than doing like burglary and murder and stuff. Or if you're an alcoholic and you go to Alcoholics Anonymous and then you pick up Catholicism in those meetings, I'd rather you be a Christian than be an alcoholic. Or let's say you have some illness and you go to an ashram and you take up Hinduism. I'd rather you be a Hindu than have whatever illness you have. So that's when I say that if it brings you peace, if it's taking you away from crime, if it's stopping you from using illicit substances, or if it's curing whatever illness you have, then that's your personal belief. But I'm not it might not work for me, so I don't need to try that. You don't need to sign me up for that. And that's what I generally try to tell people as well.
Yeah, but you know how aggressive Islamic apologists are, right? And especially with non-Muslims, they lie to them so much. Like, the lies are just like unbearable, and that's why I feel like it's my responsibility and the entire atheist community to expose those lies. So at least you can be a believer, but at least base your belief on truths instead of falsehoods. Lies.
For sure. For sure. All right, so let's continue to hear what our good friend here has to say.
Thing that has unfortunately been the case since before I even became Muslim is the fact that Islam, it's constantly being misrepresented. It used to be primarily from what we would call the mainstream media, whether it be the news on television or in
Fox News, CNN.
newspapers. But now,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that in terms of religion, like Islam especially, I think there's a problem because no one is actually properly representing Islam in the mainstream media, right? Because on one hand you have liberals like CNN, and they say Islam and Muslims are good, right? And then on the other hand you have Fox News and conservatives who say that Islam and Muslims are bad. But the problem is you have to separate between Islamic ideology and Muslims as a people, right? Muslims are not Islam. You have to criticize the ideology while still preserving the civil rights of Muslims.
Yeah, because so Islam is an ideology, not a race. And that's why I don't like the term Islamophobia, because you have every right to be scared of Islam, but at no point should that turn into anti-Muslim bigotry.
Exactly. Islamophobia is a sham term because phobia means irrational fear. But if you have fear of sex slavery or offensive jihad or hand chopping for theft or child marriage, polygyny, all these killing apostates, killing homosexuals, stoning to death for adulterers, then that's a very rational fear, right?
Yeah. And it also brings up the point of many people will tell me that when I say Islamophobia isn't real, that I don't know what racism is. And I'm like, of course I do. I grew up in Canada or the North American area and went to school right after 9/11.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so as a brown guy in Canada going to school right after 9/11, it's not fun. I know exactly what it is. And that's why I'm saying you can be scared of an ideology, but you shouldn't be scared of the actual person of the ideology.
Exactly, and that's why all the atheists that I know, they always make a disclaimer. They always say we don't support anti-Muslim bigotry, and we support the civil rights of Muslims because we have family members who are practicing Muslims, and we have nothing against them, but we're against the harmful ideology itself.
For sure. All right, so let's continue with this.
Given the direction that society has gone, a lot of it now is on social media. And from what I've seen nowadays is that a major way that Muslims and non-Muslims interact is through debates, through online arguments and spectacles. And I think that this has unfortunately led to a misrepresentation to many non-Muslims regarding what Islam is truly about. Now,
One quote I do like saying at this time is that if you get 5 Muslims in a room, you'll get 6 different opinions. There's no way to actually accurately represent the religion because it's such a broad term, or that there's someone who, like, we have a guest named Offer Fives King who loves reading stuff in Hinduism, Buddhism, and other Sufism and such. And there's people that would consider that shirk and consider him a non-Muslim, even though he's still Muslim because he still submits to Allah. Then also, he carries that same tag that ISIS would.
Mm-hmm. But for
So
my
when it's so broad on a spectrum, what would you say is the correct representation of it?
I would say the correct representation is the most literal interpretation. You just use the truism that what you see is what you get, right? Just read the text and whatever they say, apply it without adding your own interpretation to it. If it says anybody who steals, cut off their hands, then cut off their hands. And that's why I believe that I don't believe everything ISIS does is Islamic, but I think they're the most Islamic group out of any other group that I know of. And I believe that moderate Muslims are not Islamic because they don't even know what Islam is and they don't implement the teachings of Islam. They don't implement the Sharia, and all they want is just to live peaceful lives and for them to have the freedom to practice their religion in their personal lives, to pray and fast and, just live as good, citizens. So I don't think moderate Muslims accurately represent Islam. If you want to know exactly what Prophet Muhammad did throughout his life, his seerah, I think it closely matches with what ISIS does.
Yeah. Now, I actually have a question for you. This just came out, and I might be talking out my butt here, but would you say the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is to Islam what the Pope is to, or Vatican City is to Catholicism?
Yeah, that's in a way, because they're the caretakers of the religion in a sense. But the problem is that the Pope has authority that the Saudi officials do not, right? They don't have the authority to change the religion, right? But the Pope is he's more like a prophet, where he actively, engages with God, and he has the ability to change teachings, right? Like, for example, I think he supports civil unions for homosexuals now, which is something that wasn't allowed in Catholicism before. But he has absolute power and authority. That's something that no Muslim on earth has, because Muslims believe that the divine law comes from Allah alone, right? So that's something that's a difference between them, in a way.
Yeah. Would you say that not so much as a prophethood, but more so do you think there should be a unionized set of scholars that would be
Oh,
the main representation?
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
yeah, because obviously in Catholicism, the Pope's not God by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just the preacher of the God. So who would you say, or would you say that there should be some governing body like the Pope for Islam?
100% from an Islamic perspective, because you know how much the Khilafah is emphasized, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, like, from an Islamic perspective, you have to have that governing body in order to centralize Islam. Otherwise, you'll have, like, a plethora of different ideas that are, all mutually exclusive and incompatible with each other. So for the Muslims, since the Kaaba and the and in Medina are the two holiest sites, then I think the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia should be the one who has the most authority, similar to the Pope, but without the ability to actually change the teachings of Islam.
For sure. All right, let's continue this.
Now, it can be difficult to make videos such as this because if a Muslim is going to come out and they're going to be critical of certain factions of their own community, then such factions being criticized will call them opportunistic backstabbing agents. But at the same time, if you don't clarify it, then Islam is misrepresented not only to non-Muslims, but to the Muslim audience. So it really
I think he's talking about his quarrel he had with Ali Dawah and Muhammad Hijab.
I think he's talking about Daniel Hakikaju, but yeah, feel free to clarify why you think that.
Because that's the exact term Ali Dawah used in a video to talk about Sajid Lipam, who publicly. So Ali Dawah publicly dissed Sajid Lipam for having a difference of opinion on a topic, and
Oh,
Sajid Lipam tried to message him privately, I believe, Ali Dawah released those messages into publicly calling him out, and then Sajid Lipam is like, okay, you're going to deal with this publicly, then I'm going to deal with it publicly too. And Ali Dawah told him that he's a backstabbing, opportunistic person.
Oh, okay. I think you're right. I think with Ali Dawah, I think Sajid Lipam was criticizing him for being a Dawah man. So he was saying all these Dawah men, they're just YouTube personalities and they don't have any real knowledge of Islam. They don't have grounding. They haven't studied with the shuyukh, so they shouldn't have a platform. Excuse me. The reason I thought that he was talking about Daniel Hakikaju is that he also had a public spat with Daniel. And the difference between him and Daniel is the fact that Daniel is very liberal when it comes to calling other Muslims kafir. And you know that from Islamic teachings, like Prophet Muhammad said that if you call somebody a kafir, then either he's a kafir or you're a kafir, right? So it's takfir is a very sensitive issue in Islam. But Daniel, he's very liberal with calling other Muslims kafir. And that's something that Sajid disagrees with. And recently I made a video on Daniel Hakikaju and his comments on the Bayan Graduate Islamic School. And I got twice as many dislikes as likes on that video. And a lot of Daniel's supporters were coming on the show and they were saying that you're a murtad because you support Bayan Institute, right? And just because of that, like, so they thought I was a Muslim, like a liberal Muslim, and they were calling me a murtad, like a kafir, just because I'm supporting Bayan Institute. So him and his followers, they're very like easily apply the takfir label, and that's something that's very sensitive in Islam, and that's something that Sajid speaks out against. So I'm against Daniel and for Sajid when it comes to this issue from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah, and when you say that, it's almost like you're right, but you're also wrong at the same time. Yeah, I am a kafir, but not the way you think I am.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's continue here with our friend.
It does put us in between a rock and a hard place, as the saying goes. However, I know many of you watching are intelligent people. Many of you very much appreciate such clarifications. So that being the case, I wanted to just mention a few things. Firstly, I think we can contextualize the entire situation if we keep in mind the fact that nowadays our society just seems to be entertaining ourselves to death. Never in the history of humanity have people had the opportunity to sit there on their smartphones, on the internet, watching movies all day, having access to an endless amount of music and games and interacting on social media, posting content yourself. I mean, this is unprecedented, and it's something that only Allah knows how many of us are addicted to. So because
I think he's right about that, especially even for atheists like us. It's really helping us preach our content too.
Yeah, I mean, it's revolutionary. I mean, before there was no see the thing is the number of Muslims to atheists is way more, right? So a lot of times, like in my personal life, I don't know a single atheist, right? So before technological age, we never had the ability to link up with other atheists and actually spread our views to Muslims, right? So now it's way different. Like we have an equal platform to them. We're able to express our views in the same way that they are. But in the past, like in Muslim countries, the atheists would be executed. So now, even in places like Pakistan, where there's a blasphemy law, and if you speak out against Islam, you'll be put to death. But we atheists in non-Muslim countries, we're able to express our views, and even Muslims in Pakistan can view our channels and make up their own minds whether they want to still continue believing in Islam.
For sure. Yeah. So let's see if he says that this is a good thing or a bad thing.
Because we have become a society obsessed with entertainment, this of course has affected the way that religions such as Islam are presented to the people. And it's to the extent that sometimes the truth and what's right, what's actually beneficial, will be sacrificed for the sake of entertainment. And we will let our desires get the best of us because we want to be entertained. We want to watch this. And at the same time, fool ourselves into thinking that it's beneficial or that we are walking in the footsteps of the righteous Muslims. So in the name of fighting for Islam, we find people having the most absurd, ridiculous debates. But such...
And that, I think that's specifically targeted at Daniel Hakikaju, who debated that child marriage is moral.
Yeah. I mean, this is the whole problem with Sajid. I mean, sorry, the problem that Sajid has is he doesn't want people with the wrong interpretation, according to him, to have a platform, right? He doesn't want people to misrepresent Islam. So that's why he always says, like, people like Ali Dawa and Daniel Hakikaju, they don't have any formal training in Islam, right? They haven't sat with Islamic scholars in like for example in Medina University or Al Azhar, where they get like classical training from Islamic scholars. So he believes that the views they have are heterodox and not actually accurately representing Islam. And he fears that non-Muslims will look at these debates and these dawah men and be deceived into thinking that that's actual Islam, even though it's not.
Yeah. And I have to agree, it probably hurts him a lot knowing that he studied all that hard and then some idiot bozo that is going out there and sullying what he studied that hard for. So I kind of feel for him here.
Exactly.
I don't agree with him, but I understand where he's coming from. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I don't agree with him at all. I think everyone should have a platform, and whatever arguments are strongest, those are the ones that should be kept. I don't think that your background, like the amount of studying that you did, necessarily means that you'll have the correct opinion every time. Just put the evidences against each other, and whichever evidence is stronger, then take that, right?
Yeah.
Debates.
Now, one thing is for sure, I think the line for free speech is you can't insinuate a crime. That's my border of free speech. I'll do everything but insinuate crimes.
I agree with you. That's why that's quite a reasonable approach, and I think that's why Muslims should be allowed to say that apostates should be killed under an Islamic state, because that accurately represents their views. And in order for people to, make their own opinion on whether they want to believe in such a thing, they first have to be able to hear it. If everything is banned, if there's censorship and cancel culture, then nobody will ever be able to actually, logically deconstruct these arguments.
And then I think that's where why I believe Daniel Hakikashu should be banned, because he did insinuate a crime.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, because he said that it's completely moral and justified.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I mean,
that's where so if you watch, I would highly recommend watching that debate where he says as long as she hits puberty, it's completely moral. So I think that that's insinuating a crime there.
I mean, I would respectfully disagree here. I think I think it's horrible and condemnable what he's saying, but I feel like he should have the right to say it, because that's the only way where we'll be able to debate his ideas and take them down logically.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that that's probably a personal disagreement in terms of like the American politics versus Canadian politics here, because what most people don't understand is our Conservative Party is more left-leaning than the Democrats in the States.
Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of the policies that the Conservative Party and then Stephen Harper released and under his reign as Prime Minister were actually a lot more liberal than what Obama was doing.
Is there a lot of anti-Muslim bigotry in Canada?
Not at all. Not at all. It's a lot more open. And then we brought in, I think we have the highest ratio of refugees from Muslim areas.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's continue here. I think we're almost near the halfway point too. So
garner the most people because it's seen as entertaining, and you're also tapping into not only your Muslim audience who are going to cheer you on, but you're also tapping into the non-Muslim audience and those who may be cheering against you. But for everyone watching, I would like to clearly state that Islam is not about intellectually owning opponents in debates and arguments.
Islam is not about intellectually owning opponents. It's only about owning your slaves and concubines.
You know what Islam is about, right? There's a verse in the Quran which says that فَإِذَا انْسَلَخَ الْأَشْهُرُ الْحُرُمُ فَاقْتُلُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَيْثُ وَجَدتُّمُوهُمْ وَخُذُوهُمْ وَاحْصُرُوهُمْ وَاقْعُدُوا لَهُمْ كُلَّ مَرْصَدٍ فَإِنْ تَابُوا وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ فَخَلُّوا سَبِيلَهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, which just means that when the sacred months are over, then ambush the disbelievers and kill them wherever you find them, and if they repent and they pray the salah and they pray the namaz and they give the zakah, then leave them on their way. Indeed, Allah is forgiving and merciful. I believe this verse was revealed in Surah Tawbah, one of the last surahs revealed in the Quran. So Prophet Muhammad's life, it took a progression, right? In the beginning, when he was in Mecca, all he was talking about was having the freedom to express his religious views. And then right when he came to Medina, he instituted Sharia and the Hudud. And then he, raided and massacred the Jews. And then he, towards his final days, he started conquering other places. And he wrote letters to like the kings of Persia and Rome and Yemen, telling them that either you convert to Islam or you give the jizya or you die, right? So in the end, Islam is all about establishing the Sharia of Allah on the earth, and it's by force. So it's all about doing jihad, conquering other places, and either forcing them to convert or giving or humiliating them by making them pay the jizya, right? Those are the only two options that non-Muslims have under an Islamic state.
For sure. All right, so let's continue with him as well.
Islam is not about being as contrarian and unlikable as humanly possible in the name of being courageously unapologetic. But Islam is balanced. It's also not about acting like we all agree on everything, nor is it about sacrificing the truth in hopes that everyone likes you. What Islam is about is La ilaha illallah, which means there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah. And Allah is a name referring to the Creator, the one who created all of us, the one who is the all-knowing, all-hearing, the one that has the most perfect attributes. He is completely unique and he is one. And what we try to do as Muslims is submit to and follow the guidance, the revelation that he sent us. And a very
Would you say that his description is accurate?
Very accurate, because there's a verse in the Quran which says like Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi wa yaghfiru ma duna dhalika liman yasha, wa man yushrik billahi faqad iftara ithman azima, which just means that like the most unforgivable, the only unforgivable sin in Islam is to associate partners with Allah. So Islam is all about worshipping one Allah, and if that's the only criterion that differentiates people from being in hell forever versus having the chance to go to paradise. But one thing, Muslim apologists lie about sex slavery and they say that it's no longer allowed. But what they say is that it progressively became less and less until it finally became banned, because it wasn't possible to completely end sex slavery because everyone was used to it, right? But what I would say is that, first of all, that's a lie, because Prophet Muhammad and his companions took new sex and distributed them. But secondly, even if that were true, so what's the reason that polytheism was banned in one stroke, right? There was nothing in Islam that said like, okay, everyone's doing polytheism, so we can't ban it all at once. So we need people to, worship 3 gods, then 2 gods, and eventually 1 god, right? It was all done in one stroke. But so apparently from the Islamic apologist position, that means that it was more important to ban shirk than it was to ban sex slavery. So what I ask Muslims is, what's worse, praying to 2 gods or having sex slaves? If it's worse to have sex slaves than to pray to 2 gods, then it's even more worthy of Allah to have banned sex slavery immediately than it is for him to have ban polytheism.
For sure. All right, let's play this.
Very important aspect of that guidance is having the best character. As Muslims interacting with non-Muslims in the name of da'wah, in the name of calling people to Islam and teaching them about Islam, it's incumbent upon us to represent this religion through having the best of character. And we should relay the reality of what Islam is about. It always has to come back to worshiping Allah alone, trying to learn about who Allah is, keeping in mind our purpose in life and the fact that Allah is going to resurrect us and we are going to be held accountable before him in the hereafter. Understanding that he sent prophets throughout time, and the last prophet he sent was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and that the Quran is the final revelation that he sent to us and preserved for us that we may be guided by it. These are the types of things that we Muslims should be inviting to and teaching. And once the true message of Islam has been conveyed, it's up to you to accept it or reject it. If you reject it, then we say, for you is your religion, and for us is our religion. We have not been.
Then why is there the entire chapter 9?
Yeah, because Sajid, brother Sajid is lying. He's saying that lakum dinukum waliyadin, which was abrogated. That was only in Mecca, right? That was the part when Prophet Muhammad was peaceful. That's when he had no power. And then once he became when he came to Medina and got power, that's when Surah 9 was revealed, and that's when it told Prophet Muhammad to fight the disbelievers, right? And then there's a hadith that says that Prophet Muhammad said that if you believe in Allah in the last day and you pray the salah and you give the zakah, then your blood is sacred for me. Otherwise, I can shed your blood without any issue, right?
Yeah. So I'll have to like catch this guy on that point where that's not the standard narrative.
It isn't. He's mistaken here.
Yeah.
Been sent to argue and debate with you all day, every day. But unfortunately, for quite some time now, this is what we find. And we find even amongst ourselves, Muslims debating each other for the sake of entertainment. Men and women sitting together, casually discussing topics that are really not a priority or relevant to the vast, vast majority of Muslims, if not all of the Muslims, watching these conversations play out. So, to summarize and conclude this video, I would firstly encourage anyone who is sincerely looking for truth to ask the Creator to guide you. Because at the end of the day, nothing I say, nothing that anyone says in a debate, in a video, in an argument is ultimately going to guide you. It's the Creator who's going to guide you. And I'd also say, just keep in mind that these entertainers online are just that. They're entertainers. They're not the type of people who are necessarily really going to tell you about what Islam actually is. They're not necessarily proper representations of what a Muslim should be. And for anyone who has had the message of Islam conveyed to you and you understand it and you reject it, you don't want to follow it, you don't want to believe in it, then it's not beneficial for us to go back and forth and argue and debate. And I would encourage my Muslim brothers and sisters to also internalize that and to not fall into what we've seen become a sport, an entertaining spectacle of argumentation, which is not from our religion. For those of you who are really interested in learning about Islam, inshallah, I'm going to start releasing videos where I'm explaining from the ground up what Islam teaches, what Islam is, who the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was. So please subscribe and check back for such videos if you're interested. Allah knows best. Thank you for watching. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
All right, I don't need to hear the whole prayer. But oh, where did our guest go? 1 sec. Let me get the guest back. Let's see what happened. Oh, he dropped out by accident, I think. All right, yeah, I think our office having some technical issues. But in my opinion, I agree with Shahid that Sajid. I mean, I keep getting confused here. That yeah, he's entitled to his opinion on that topic. Obviously, he's deeply offended by this gentleman, Daniel Hakikachu, for his so-called misrepresentations of it. So yeah, yes, our friend is back.
Sorry about that. I was having some internet issues.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, our friend Sajid was just reading out his ending prayers.
Okay.
But yeah. So, what would you say is your concluding response to Sajid's video here?
What?
Afif, your internet's gone again. All right, I messaged him again. Hopefully this gets reviewed. All right, yeah. So just to save some time, I'll just give my closing statements. I personally enjoyed this interview, and then I somewhat agree with Sajid there. Um, he probably worked that hard to study and everything for the religion, and to see someone like Daniel just advertise it, it probably hurts him in the stomach. So yeah, I completely understand why he's putting this out there. And then I also enjoyed the discussion I had with our guest today. Afif was very knowledgeable. And if please do leave a comment if you want to see him on again in the future. All right, so let us wait for our guest to come back. I really don't have much to add. Today's mainly about interviewing him. I really need to shave. Yeah, no, I just see myself here and I'm like, holy shit, I'm actually ugly. But I also got to ask for the thumbnail of this video, I got to make sure I know who's getting owned here so I can make it properly. Islam owned by two atheists, two Hyderabadi atheists. God damn, I really need to shave. Inshallah. God willing, I will take this beard off. All right, I'll probably have to cut out the silence here as well. I apologize, guys, for technical issues. Hey, the ad's back up on Kijiji. $600. Fuck that. Alright, fuck that. I ain't paying $600 for that crap. Alright, one sec. Alright.
Sorry about that.
No worries, yeah. We were I think we were concluding anyway, so I wanted to ask you what's your concluding statement?
I just wanted to thank you so much for having me on. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it'd be an honor for me to have you on my channel in the future. And I just wanted to plug my channel if that's okay with you.
For sure, yeah. It'll be in the description as well. But please do add it.
Thank you very much.
For sure. So please do subscribe to Office channel here, and please do.
Do you think? Sorry, do you think you could just pull it up on the screen? Would it be possible, just for a few?
Yeah, sure. Let me just pull it up here.
Okay.
Let me just get the link
Sure.
here. All right. So this is your channel. Let me see if I got it here. All right. So this is your channel here. I believe you have 200 videos on there, and I've watched a few of them, and a lot of them are really good.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing my channel.
For sure, yeah. So please do subscribe, and then we'll set up because we're improving Gin and Tonic. I took StreamYard Premium, so I'll record for you as well. And this file I'll also send you, so you can catch it both on Gin and Tonic and Office channel.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I just wanted to say that I watched your interview of Haris Sultan many years ago, and I thought it was a really brilliant interview. And that's why one of the reasons I feel really honored that you took me on. You also had Abdullah Samir on, and I believe you had the Master Arab on, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm really deeply grateful for you to take me on the show.
Thank you so much. In any case, we're ending the recording